Come fly, let's fly away. Inniaz the Gale Force is a cool commander from Jumpstart. Two colors, we've got blue and white, we've got reward for playing flying creatures, and we've got some theft built in. Let's talk about it in Commander, and the video starts right now. Special thanks to our Patreon supporters who power our channel. Check out our Patreon for monthly giveaways, exclusive content, and even a starring role in our fan fight series. Link in the description below. Hello and welcome to the day. Thank you for spending your time with us. Welcome back to another episode of Jake and Joel Are Magic. I am Joel. We're going to talk about Inniaz, the Gale Force, in Commander and how to build it. But first, if you wouldn't mind, go down there, hit like, hit subscribe, all the YouTube stuff. It really helps us out if you like this video and you want to see more like it. Let's jump over into this Commander. Inniaz, the Gale Force, 2 blue, 3 other for a 4/4 flyer. It's got an ability with a colon. It's 2 and a hybrid, either white or blue mana. Attacking creatures with flying get +1/+1 until end of turn. We've got a little flying tribal deck to build here. It also says whenever 3 or more creatures you control with flying attack, each player gains control of a non-land permanent of your choice, controlled by the player to their right. This is chaotic glory. This is flying, attacking creatures on the battlefield. It's theft, it's chaos, and I can't wait to build it. We're going to talk about some flying creatures you can play. We're going to talk about ways to create some flying creatures. We're going to talk about ways to grow those flying creatures with the help of Inniaz. We're going to talk about ways to protect those flying creatures, and we're going to talk about how to get some extra value out of those flying creatures. Let's get into these flying creatures. First group of cards I want to go through is just some flying creatures that are really good, and you should probably think about including. Aven Mind Sensors up first. 3 cost for a 2/1 flash flyer bird wizard. If an opponent would search a library, that player searches the top 4 cards of your library instead. Look, we're shutting down tutors with this card. We're shutting down fetch lands with this card. Aven Mind Sensor is an auto-include for me in this deck. Mole Drifter is another auto-include for me just because I love it so much. 5 cost for a 2/2. When it comes into play, draw 2 cards, flying elemental, but it's got an evoke of 3. If it's early in the game, you can just play it for 3 mana, draw 2 cards, it comes into the battlefield, and you sacrifice it. But Mole Drifter's classic. Let's get into some other flying creatures. Angel of Sanctions. 5 cost for a 3/4 flyer. When it enters the battlefield, exile target non-land permanent an opponent controls as long as it's on the battlefield. Plus, it can embalm and come back to do it again. This is a strong flying creature. Remorseful Cleric. Let's look at some utility on some flying creatures. 2 mana for a 2/1 flyer. Sack it. Exile all cards from target player's graveyard. No more graveyard strategy for you, opponent. You will be remorseful when my Cleric sacrifices and nukes your whole yard. Wingmate Rock. Now we're getting into more of the strategy of the commander. 5 cost for a 3/4. If it enters the battlefield when you've attacked with a creature, create another 3/4 creature token with flying, and when it attacks, you gain 1 life for each attacking creature. Now we're starting to see some strategy, some synergy. Let's get some flying creatures in the air. Let's get some attacking going. This is how we do it. Let's look at some other utility on a flying creature. It's 2 mana for a 2/1 flyer, but it's got an instant adventure that you can go on. For 3 mana, you can counter target spell with converted mana cost 3 or less. It's not going to get a lot of stuff in EDH, but it can really target some important spells that could be tricky just by having this card in your hand, by casting it as a counterspell. Nimble Obstructionist, here's some more utility. 3 cost for a 3/1 flash flying bird wizard. However, you can cycle it for 3, discard it, and draw a card to counter target activated or triggered ability that you don't control. Get that pesky ability out of here. We don't want you screwing with our plan. We've got a Nimble Obstructionist and we know how to use it. Now, before we get into the true strategy of building this deck, let's talk about the OG, Consecrated Sphinx. It's really good. 6 cost 4/6. Draw a card, opponent. We draw 2. It's really good and you probably want to include it. Let's talk about how to create some flyers. We're going to start with Skycat Sovereign. 2 mana for a 1/1 flyer. It gets +1/+1 for each other creature you control with flying. And for 4 mana, you can create a 1/1 white cat bird creature token with flying. This is a very good way to do this. You get a big creature and you get a mana sink outlet to create 1/1 flyers. That's not the only way, however. We can cast it off instant or sorcery spells. Murmuring Mystic is a 4 mana 1/5. Whenever you cast an instant or sorcery, we get a 1/1 bird creature token with flying. Okay, now we're going wide in the air, which is what we want to do. We want to be casting a lot of these abilities that get us 1/1 tokens flying in the air so that we can attack with 3 or more and start moving some stuff around the battlefield. Emeria Angel is an excellent inclusion for this. 4 mana 3/3 flyer, landfall. Whenever a land enters the battlefield, you can put a 1/1 white bird creature token with flying onto the battlefield. Okay, now we're going wide. We're getting some power in the air. We're attacking. Sacred Mesa. I just became aware of this card when I was researching this video. That tends to happen with these videos, and this one is awesome. 3 mana for an enchantment at the beginning of your upkeep. Sacrifice Sacred Mesa unless you sacrifice a Pegasus. However, for just 2 mana, you're putting a 1/1 creature token with flying onto the battlefield. If you have at least 4 mana to dump into this, you're not going to lose Sacred Mesa ever. You're going to net a 1/1, and you've got a 1/1 to sack to Sacred Mesa. This is a definite inclusion for me. Okay, now we've got some flying Pegasus in the air. We've got some birds. Let's get some more birds. Migratory Route. 5 mana to create 4 1/1 white bird creature tokens with flying, which is good. However, I love the early game utility of this with that basic land cycling. Pay 2, discard it, go get a basic land, reveal it, put it into your hand. You're short for mana. It is blue-white. We don't have green in this deck. You can go get your basic land, you can get it out onto the battlefield. Now we've got some birds and some cats and some Pegasus. Let's get some Thopters going too. Whenever you cast an artifact spell, says Efficient Construction, create a 1/1 colorless Thopter artifact creature token. Now, it's not out of the realm of imagination that we're going to be running a lot of mana rocks in this deck. We can run some more utility artifacts, especially if you're going to base this in Thopter flyers as your 1/1 flying base that's going to let your Inniaz grow them with the anthem and start moving stuff around the battlefield like the Gale Force is wont to do. Efficient Construction is a great enchantment to do it. Let's double down on that with Sai Master Thopters. 3 mana for a 1/4 when you cast an artifact, create a 1/1 flying Thopter. Now you can pay 2 also with Sai, sack 2 artifacts to draw a card. So if you've got extra of those Thopters in the air, pitch 2 of them away and draw a card. Hangerback Walker, OG. Love this. You gotta run this. Lots of Thopters onto the battlefield. XX enters the battlefield with X +1/+1 counters on it. When it dies, you get that many 1/1 flying Thopters. Hangerback Walker is definitely a way to get a lot of flying power suddenly in the air out of nowhere. Now, if we're going to be running all of these things that create 1/1 creature tokens, how about we run Divine Visitation so that instead of whatever creature token it was going to create, you get a 4/4 white angel with flying and vigilance instead. That's a lot of value. Suddenly we're attacking for a lot in the air, and it's not just a bunch of 1/1s. While we're on the topic of angels, let's run Luminarch Ascension. 2 mana for an enchantment at the beginning of each opponent's end step. Each opponent's. If you didn't lose life this turn, you put a quest counter on it, and then once you've got 4 or more, this is a 4/4 white angel flying token creator. For 2 mana, you can dump any amount of mana in this as you want. This card is a house. I've seen this come down early in EDH games, and absolutely take over the game when there's no answer for it in anybody's hand. This is a great way to get lots of angels onto the battlefield very quickly. Now, back to our 1/1 flying creature token strategy. If we've got Mentor of the Meek on the battlefield, anytime any of our Thopters or birds or cats or whatever come into the battlefield, Pegasus, whenever another creature with power 2 or less enters the battlefield, you can pay 1 if you do draw a card. So now we're getting extra value and cards into our hand. That doesn't say non-token creature, it says another creature. Mentor of the Meek would be huge in a strategy like this, especially with Thopters. With Thopters, Dovin Grand Arbiter would be a good planeswalker to run in this deck. For -1 on a 3 loyalty walker, you get to create a 1/1 with flying, but it's that +1 and then that ultimate. +1 until in a turn whenever a creature you control deals combat damage to a player, put a loyalty counter on Dovin, and then when you can -7 him, you can look at the top 10 cards of your library, put 3 into your hand. That's a lot of card value for something that's probably going to be pretty straightforward to pull off. Here's another walker that would be great in this deck, Tessarin. It's a 5 loyalty walker for 5 mana, and you +1 to create a 1/1 Thopter with flying, and you 0, and if you've got 3 or more artifacts, you're drawing 2 cards. This is an excellent walker and an auto inclusion in here for me. Dovin, it really depends on how aggressive we're going to get with our 1/1 strategies, if we're just going to go crazy wide, or if we want to play more, mana cost actual flying creatures. But for me, Tezzeret represents cards, represents 1/1 flyers. This is an auto include. Now, we're creating all of these tokens. How about we have Anointed Procession just double them as they're coming onto the battlefield? If an effect would create one or more tokens under your control, it creates twice that many of those tokens instead. Twice the Thopters, twice the Pegasus, twice the Angels. Anointed Procession is definitely a way to go if you want to go with this strategy. We've got all of these flyers in the air. What do we need to do? We need to grow them. Empyrean Eagle, we want it for that ability right there. Other creatures you control with flying get +1/+1. All of a sudden our 1/1s are 2/2s. Thunderclap Wyvern, this is just redundancy on the ability. It's a flash flyer. Other creatures you control with flying get +1/+1. Let's grow the line. Let's go wide, then go up. Favorable winds. Creatures you control with flying get +1/+1. You see what ability I'm going for here. I'm looking for the redundancy. I'm stacking redundancy. Gravitational Shift, 5 mana for an enchantment. Creatures with flying get +2/+0. Creatures without flying get -2/-0. This is double. We're going to benefit ourselves and detract from our opponents. Gravitational Shift's fantastic. Angel of Invention is two things. It is a flying creature with Vigi and lifelink that also anthems our other creatures up +1/+1 and can bring 2 1/1s. Granted, they're not flying, but it can make our line even wider when it enters the battlefield, or it can just come in as a 4/3 flying Vigi lifelinker that also anthems our entire line. Angel of Invention is awesome. Now, at instant speed, it doesn't always have to be present, but at instant speed, we can Rally of Wings, untap all creatures we control. Creatures you control with flying get +2/+2 until end of turn. This is a way to surprise our opponents when they're trying to clap back at us. This is a way for our entire line to suddenly go up by 2/2 when we're attacking and just taking our opponents down. We've also got Sarah the Benevolent. There are a couple of walkers, and this is one that I would want to run. 4 mana for a 4 loyalty walker, +2 creatures you control with flying get +1/+1 until end of turn, and Sarah can make a 4/4 white flying angel Vigi token. I love having redundancy on the anthems. Now, granted, Alesh Norn is not anything to do with flying. It's just a really good anthem. It's going to give us +2/+2, all of our opponent's creatures, -2/-2. It's 7 mana for a 4/7 Vigi, but you just want that 4 toughness power swing of the anthem for us and the anti-anthem for our opponents. This is definitely a card you want to play. So we've gone wide with our line of 1/1 flyers. We've grown them up with all of these anthems. Now let's protect them once they're there with cards like Sephara Sky's Blade. It is a 7-cost 7/7, but you may tap 1 white and tap 4 untapped creatures you control with flying rather than pay Sephara's mana cost. It's a flying life-linking 7/7 that says other creatures you control with flying have indestructible. It's going to protect our line. They're going to have to destroy Sephara before they can destroy anything else. Selfless Spirit is a flyer for 2 mana that sacrifices to give creatures we control indestructible until end of turn. We protect our line through a board wipe with this, and we're able to keep swinging instead of having to rebuild. Glory, this is one, it's only targeted or it helps a lot with blocking when you're attacking, but if it's in your graveyard, you pay 3 creatures you control gain protection from the color of your choice until end of turn. This protects us from targeted removal, this gets us through blockers on their line when we attack, and to boot, it is a 3/3 flyer for 5 if you just need another flyer on the battlefield. Stone Cloaker is a way to go in and grab our commander and pull him out of harm's way. It's a flash flyer 3 mana 3/2. When it enters the battlefield, return a creature you control to its owner's hand, so that's how we protect our commander. And when it enters the battlefield, we can exile target card from a graveyard. It's not a huge extra ability, but we'll take any extra text that we can. And honestly, if somebody's playing some kind of recursion strategy and they've got, say, an Artisan of Kozilek in the graveyard already, and they're planning on rezzing that and then rezzing something else with it, let's go in, Stonecloak that Artisan, and get that strategy out of here. We can also protect them through a stacks type ability on Jubilant Skybonder. 3 mana for a 2/2 flyer. Creatures you control with flying have spells your opponents cast that target this creature cost 2 more to cast. It's just a little bit of stacks, and this is maybe not an inclusion in the deck, but because it is very specific to our entire theme, I did like to include it on this list. Plus, it's a new card. Archetype of Imagination is a way to protect them while they're attacking, because creatures you control have flying. Yes, we know this. Creatures your opponents control lose flying and can't have or gain flying. That means essentially we're attacking for free. There's not going to be any blocks because nothing can block our stuff. Regardless, Archetype of Imagination is very good and should be included. Magus of the Moat. This is a way to protect ourselves. Pay 4 mana. Creatures without flying can't attack. Straight up. They gotta destroy this if they want to attack us with non-flying creatures. This plus Archetype of Imagination on the battlefield, essentially our opponents can't attack us until they kill Magus of the Moat, or they get their flying out of flying jail. I also really like Spellseeker in this deck just because we do have the 2 colors and we want to be able to go and get our protection spell. Spellseeker says 3 mana 1/1 enters the battlefield. You can search your library for an instant or sorcery card with converting mana cost 2 or less and put it into your hand. So you could go get your Rally of Wings, which we've already talked about. That could help you, you know, get around a Massacre Worm or something like that, or just help you win the game. Get any other protection spell, or straight up just go grab a counter spell. Have it in your hand ready to protect against the Wrath of God that's going to blow your entire board up. So we've played some flyers, we've created some flyers, we've grown our flyers, we've protected our flyers. Now let's get some extra value out of our flyers, and we'll start with Wind Reader Sphinx. 7 mana for a 3/7 that says whenever a creature with flying attacks, you may draw a card. Boom. Sphinx, you're in the deck. You've made the cut. Reconnaissance Mission. Here's an enchantment. Whenever a creature you control deals combat damage to a player, you may draw a card. Also, you can cycle this out of your hand if you don't need it. I'm a big fan of Recon Mission. I think that this should be included, especially if you're going with a go wide in the air 1/1 Thopters or Angels or, you know, Birds or whatever strategy you're going to take, whatever tribe you think will serve you best. Recon Mission is going to net you some extra cards if you're going wide. As will Coastal Piracy. 4 mana, whenever a creature you control deals combat damage to an opponent, you may draw a card. Essentially the same effect, just in redundancy. All it doesn't have is the cycling ability, and that's fine. We just want to net cards off of this. Here's Cathars Crusade again. I know I put this card in every aggro creature-based deck that has white in it, but this is just a really good card. Whenever a creature enters the battlefield under your control, put a +1/+1 counter on each creature you control. Any of those effects that we were talking about earlier in the video that are creating a bunch of 1/1s or 4/4s or anything, every time a creature's entering the battlefield, everybody's getting a +1/+1 counter. This is how to grow our flyers. This was in the wrong category. This should have been in growing our flyers category. Definitely want Cathars Crusade in there. It's value and it's growing your flyers. Isperia, Supreme Judge, 6 mana for a 6/4 flyer Sphinx. Whenever a creature attacks you or a planeswalker you control, you may draw a card. This is kind of like Magus of the Moat, where it protects us, and if anybody wants to clap back at us because we should be attacking and using Inniaz to move permanents around and pay that 3 and grow our flying creatures, Isperia is going to protect us and give us cards whenever a creature attacks us or a planeswalker we control. Outside of those cards, if you do decide to go specifically in on a tribe for this with whatever flying tokens you might want to create, make sure you go check out our EDH tribal video. It's got a lot of good tribal cards that can go into any deck and does have some specific picks that I think would fit very well into this deck in the colors blue and white. Appreciate you watching. Let me know down in the comments below which cards I forgot to put into this deck. These Jumpstart commanders are very cool 2-color commanders, and I've had a great time brewing around them, and I can't wait to play with them. Like I said, the YouTube stuff, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. We really appreciate when you do. If you want to support us further, we have a Patreon with free giveaways, monthly giveaways, behind the scenes videos, early access to videos. The link is down in the description below. Go check it out and see if you're a good fit. And if you want to hang out with us, we stream on YouTube and on Twitch. Hit that notification bell down there if you want to know when we go live on YouTube, and go find us over on Twitch. Jake and Joel are magic. I appreciate it. I'm tapped out. We'll catch you later.